Very glad to be here and that you would like to be present at our presentation. Leonoor and I represent Dedicon from the Netherlands. I'll be telling in short what Dedicon is and what we do. And I'll be telling you something about the context of where these textbooks are being used. I'm an educationalist, so I know a bit about education, but fortunately I've been a special needs teacher as well. So I think that's a good combination. Leonoor does all the creative and hard work because she's the editor who is adapting the mainstream textbooks. We have a handout for those of you who'd like to take it home, but unfortunately not in Braille. So, okay. Here we see our building in Grave, near the ancient town of Nijmegen. The orange is very prominent, and you may know that the Netherlands is the country of orange because of our royal family and because of our football players. And if we really want to have a party, we all dress up in orange. But this is merely a coincidence. Our name is a bit difficult in Dutch because it has no relation with a Dutch word, but internationally it has, because it makes us think of dedication and being dedicated. And that's what we hope to be, what we want to be. Dedicated to make information accessible for all those who have a print disability. So individuals with a visual impairment, but also individuals with dyslexia, or even those who have trouble holding a book. We work for the Royal Library of the Netherlands, so everything we get in the public library is also what we make accessible. But we also work for the education branch, and that's what we will be talking about today. Here we see some of our colleagues at work. Leonoor took this picture last week, I think, and they are adapting the mainstream school books. We do this mainly for primary schools and secondary schools. That's not our choice, but we are a bit restricted in what we can do. But students with visual impairment, they can demand, and then we will try to make books that fit. Okay, so second one. Yeah, we heard the wonderful example of Norway, where I think all education is inclusive. That's not the case in the Netherlands. Our country is small, densely populated, so it's not so very hard to go to school, to a special school every day, but still being in a minibus for an hour in the morning and in the evening, that's hard for children. So mainly parents have been struggling and fighting for their child to go to school in the neighborhood, in the village, in the town, together with their playmates and peers. So in 2014, the law on appropriate education was introduced, meaning that's not so easy anymore to refer pupils to special schools. So they are really meant to go to mainstream schools. Fortunately, I must say, the special schools still exist because some pupils really do need the extra support all day. And this is not the case in the mainstream primary and secondary schools. Appropriate education means that the school has to offer appropriate education, but unfortunately groups are big, sometimes up to 30 pupils in a class. So pupils with visual impairment have to be able to work independently without support all day. They have support, but that's only a few hours every week. So it's important that the books will be adapted so they can work with the same material in groups, in pairs, like everyone else, and that they don't have to skip tasks simply because they are not accessible. Now, Leonoor will... no, I've one left. Excuse me. Another thing that's important is that there are many publishing companies, commercial publishing companies, and every school is free to choose the material that appeals most to them. So that fits their preferred pedagogy. So for us, this means that for literacy or numeracy, 7 or 10 different series of books have to be adapted. We do this, and we want to do this, and for this we receive subsidy from the government. Now, Leonoor will go on and tell you about how this work is being done.
Okay, I'm sorry. In this slide, there are the logos of some of the commercial publishing companies that are in the Netherlands making course material for primary school children. Here we see some of the covers of some of these books, and as you can see, they are very, very colorful. The next slide shows some pages from primary school books, and they have very complicated layouts. There are puzzles, there are photos, there are cartoons. Pupils are not only required to write down their answers, they have to use a variety of techniques. They have to use crayons in different colors, they have to draw lines and circle, underline text parts, etc. All this is done to make the school books more appealing to sighted children, but if you're blind, obviously it's very difficult to keep up with your peers if you're using the same material. And we believe simply converting these textbooks into Braille is not sufficient, especially for primary school children who are not yet experienced Braille readers or computer users. Most pupils in the Netherlands who are blind work on a laptop from a very early age on. So they have to find a way to make these exercises on their computer. So simply converting these textbooks into Braille is not sufficient. The children would constantly have to be creative in finding their own solutions. How can I make this complicated exercise on my computer? As Mieke pointed out, the children do not have one-to-one support at their constant disposal. They have to work independently a great deal of time. And they can't raise their hand to ask the teacher for help all the time because there are 25 to 30 pupils in the classroom that all need attention now and then. In many cases, children would just skip the exercise because they cannot make it. Well, to help the blind children with the course material in 2012, Dedicon did a research project called EDA. This stands for Expertise Center for Didactical and Digital Adaptations. In this project, we worked together with some other Dutch centers of expertise for the visually impaired, like the Royal Dutch Physio and Bartimeus. And in this project, we experimented in adapting textbooks to help blind pupils work independently with the course material. These adaptations were received very positively then by students and teachers alike. So as a result of this project, since 2014, we invest extra time in adapting textbooks to make them accessible for primary school pupils. And we call these didactical adaptations. What do we do? For example, we describe images in text if the images are functional. We offer additional explanation or clarify information if needed. We repeat information so the pupil doesn't have to search back on previous pages. We rearrange text into a more logical order, announce what the pupil is going to do to give them a better overview. And we adapt exercises to a more accessible form. For example, if the pupil is required to make a drawing, we have them make a description, or instead of underlining, we have them type the words or tick boxes or something like that. And sometimes we replace images by tactile drawings. This is usually the case for mathematical figures, graphics, and maps. Our aim is to stay as close to the original book and the didactical aims of the authors as possible. In this way, the pupil can still team up with his peers, participate in group discussions about today's lesson, but he can also work independently if needed. So the idea is that we do not alter the actual contents of the book, but just the accessibility. Of course, there's also a legal restriction because of the law on copyright that makes it important to stay close to the original book. I'm now going to show you two examples of exercises that were didactically adapted by us. First, you see the original exercise from the textbook, in which I replaced the original Dutch text by an English translation, and then I will show you the adapted version by Dedicon. Both examples that I'm going to show you are meant for children of about 10 years of age. The first example is from a grammar book. There is a small story of 7 sentences about a family moving house. There is a cartoon drawing of a little girl carrying a couch with her father. And the instruction reads, read the sentences, underline the subject by a dotted line, underline the predicate by a single line, underline the direct verb by a double line, underline the object by a wavy line, underline the direct object by small plus signs. Well, this is obviously an exercise that's impossible to make on a Perkins or a laptop with braille display. So what did we do? We adapted the text a little bit. Firstly, we added the word exercise for better overview. In the original, there's just a number in front of the exercise, and the layout, because of the layout, it's also always obvious when the next exercise starts, but if you just have text, it's not always so obvious. So this way it's clear when one exercise ends and when the next one starts. We added the word 7 to announce what's coming and to give better overview of what the student is required to do. Read the 7 sentences. We numbered the sentences A, B, C, etc. And instead of having the children underline the words in various ways, we have them type the words. The words subject, predicate, direct verb, and object and indirect object are repeated at every sentence, so the pupil doesn't need to memorize all these. The image, as you can see, is left out. It's a pity, but we consider the image irrelevant for the didactical aim of the exercise, so it's just omitted. Sorry. previous
To
one.
go backwards.
Nee, ik moet de vorige hebben.
Even kijken.
Ik ben 1 te ver.
Previous one.
Beeldje.
Here it is.
The next exercise is from a math book. It's a very complicated exercise at first sight because there is a cartoon drawing with lots of information. There are 5 human figures in the drawing, a man, a woman and 3 children, and they are all talking to each other through text balloons and chattering. Underneath the drawing there is a table in which numbers can be written. The instruction reads, how tall are they? Fill in the table. And then there's a given scale of 1 to 40. So the aim of this exercise is that the children use a ruler, measure the figures in the drawing, and then calculate their height and their height in reality by using the scale. For this exercise, we choose to make a tactile drawing, which I will show you later on. Maybe for the sighted people under us, it's maybe nice to think about it and try to predict what this tactile drawing is going to look like, because you might be surprised or even disappointed. The text part, again, we added the word exercise. We refer to the tactile drawing in the text because the tactile drawing is in a separate book. The children usually work on their laptop, and the tactile drawings are in a map, in a book.
In the booklet. Yeah.
Or if the children work with printed braille, the drawings are also in a separate book. So we refer to the drawing in the exercise, so the pupil knows that he has to pick up the other book. Then we describe the tactile drawing. There are 5 lines. They stand for 2 adults and 3 children. How tall are they in the drawing? How tall are they in reality? The scale is given, 1 to 40. The table is converted to plain text here, and all the irrelevant information is omitted, like the texts in the text balloons. The tactile drawing looks like this. No human figures, just 5 simple lines that can easily be measured by using a ruler. Then I will come to my final slide, which has some conclusions. Adapting materials like this obviously takes a lot of time, but still we managed to produce about 225 textbooks like this with didactical adaptations for primary school children in the last year, in 2016. And we did this with 2 to 3 people, so we have been working very hard. We built a website to advise teachers about making their own material accessible, because there, besides all the different course materials that are available from the publishing companies, there still are a lot of teachers that make their own materials. And we have started to visit some schools to speak with the students and the teachers, ask them about their experiences with our newly adapted materials, and gather their feedback. The responses up till now are few, because time and resources are limited and we don't have time to go into the country and visit schools all the time. But what we hear up to now is very positive, and an important aim for the coming year is to make more of these visits. I hope this conference will give us a nice opportunity to meet some colleagues of other countries, to find out if visually impaired children are included in mainstream education in other countries as well. We heard about Norway, and this morning I attended a lecture by some colleagues from Iceland who also adapted material, which was very interesting. So, if you feel addressed, please do not hesitate to speak to me and exchange experiences. I also put my email address on the slide, leonoor@dedicon.nl.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Stay right here for a moment. We might have a question. Yes?
First of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Isla, and I'm a representative of U.S. Embassy in Morocco. We are working with the visually impaired people through American language centers. We teach English for the visually impaired, and we try later on to make them or help them find a job, not become independent. Well, excuse me, when you said, I'm afraid I don't agree with you when you said that images and pictures in books, in mainstream and classes are not that useful for visually impaired students. I know that converting print into Braille is easy, thanks to printers, but sometimes it's difficult for teachers or for technology to convert the images into, let's say, diagrams, Braille, or whatever. It is difficult. But I think that the role of a teacher in a mainstream class is, in fact, verbalize everything. Well, that boy or that girl in that group studying along with sighted student have the right to know what the image is.
Of course.
Because it helps the teacher set in the context, helping the student get in the context of the point, whether it is grammatical or vocabulary or whatever other point.
Yeah.
What we do back in Morocco is only Morocco also is using we have mainstream classes. The teacher is supposed to verbalize, describe, and I agree.
So,
with
do you have a question?
Yeah. Is that and a comment? And I agree with the Professor Clay yesterday when you said partnership is so important. Well, what we do is that we have partnerships with university, and then we ask people who want to do tutoring for the students outside the classes to help them go back to the points that they miss with the teacher inside classes. It was not a question, by the way, it's a comment.
No. Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe,
Do you have a comment
maybe
about
I have
that?
a very
Sure.
short
We
comment.
can.
Yeah, because
We can.
of course it would be wonderful if all pictures could be made totally accessible. But as we explained, there are many different sort of textbooks, and we work with government subsidy. So our time and our what we can do is limited. So it's also an economic choice that we unfortunately have to make.
Thank you very much. Thanks again.
Okay.